This is Darth Vader, the manifestation of fear and pain, the one chosen by the Force itself, and the literal embodiment of aura in human form. During Vader's prime, he was a force of evil so powerful and violent that his presence alone would have Jedi Masters frozen in fear. But even with all that aura, even if you hate to admit it, he can be beaten. Now, I'm not talking about Force gods like the Father and Abeloth, or giant creatures like the Zillo Beast. I'm talking about 5 specific beings from Star Wars canon that have the power, knowledge, and pure ability to go toe-to-toe against one of the greatest Sith Lords of all time in a random encounter and win. Now, even though the last person of these 5 is the most controversial, we are going to start off with the man who has already beaten Vader on screen twice, and that is none other than Obi-Wan Kenobi. Listen, it low-key pains me to admit this because I'm someone who truly believes that a prime Vader who is not conflicted should absolutely win a 1v1 encounter against Kenobi 9 out of 10 times. Like, bro, Vader is much stronger in the Force than Kenobi. It is a canon fact that Darth Vader is the greatest duelist in the Star Wars universe, and even though his suit limits his power, it provides him with insane amounts of physical strength and other buffs. But anytime Kenobi is in the picture, Vader becomes way too prideful and emotional, which has led him to lose literally every single canon encounter they've had. Now, I gotta give Kenobi his flowers because a conflicted Vader will still slam every single other being in the entire Star Wars galaxy besides the 5 characters in this video, but what allows Kenobi to actually beat Vader is his cleaner, more composed fighting style. This dude was able to become the greatest Jedi in the Order to ever use Form 3 of lightsaber combat, and he is a human who lives a maximum of 80 to 100 years. Like, do you realize how absolutely insane that is? There are thousands of other creatures in Star Wars like Yoda and Plo Koon who live hundreds of years and have so much time to master these forms, but Kenobi, a mere human, was able to become the definitive master of this form. Now, what makes this form so powerful is that it is designed to perfectly counter and outlast aggressive fighters by slowly picking them apart and using their own strengths and weaknesses against them. And what better opponent is there to use it on than possibly the single most aggressive and impulsive fighter in all of Star Wars? Listen, if you also believe that a prime, unconflicted, and perfectly calm and calculated Vader would win in a random counter against Kenobi, you would be absolutely right. But unfortunately, that is a version of Vader that doesn't exist, because around Kenobi, he is the opposite of the cold and calculated Sith machine that he is against everyone else. Now, the second person on this list is a being so terrifying, evil, and powerful that it makes Vader look like a crying baby against a hydrogen bomb. I am, of course, speaking about none other than his master, the greatest Sith to ever exist, Darth Sidious. Of the 5 people that could beat Vader in Star Wars, Palpatine is one of the only ones where it wouldn't even be a competition. Dog, the second Vader would even think to raise his lightsaber up to Palpatine, he would be cooked instantly. And I'm not even over exaggerating. Like, in canon alone, Vader has tried to kill Palpatine probably like 50 times throughout his entire life, and every single time it ended in embarrassment. Guys, you have to remember that Palpatine is always 50 steps ahead of Vader. For example, one time Vader tried pulling up on Palpatine while standing on top of one of the most powerful creatures in Star Wars that he just tamed, and Palpatine simply attacked him with 2 of his own creatures and then proceeded to use the Force against Vader's creature and strangled it with little to no effort. Also, his suit is specifically built to be countered by Palpatine's Force lightning, so if Vader was to ever try and fight Palpatine in a fair 1v1, he is not making it past a minute. Bro, I know it's not canon, but the entire plot of the Force Unleashed games is about Vader creating and training one of the most overpowered Force users to ever exist just so he can overthrow Palpatine with their combined strength. If Palpatine and Vader were to fight 1,000 times, Palpatine is coming out on top every single time, and it is not up for debate. Now, the only other character that would humiliate Vader, possibly even worse than Palpatine, is the second chosen one of the Force, the most powerful Jedi to ever live, Luke Skywalker. Skywalker. And no, I'm not talking about no sequels Luke. I'm talking about post Return of the Jedi Prime Grand Master Luke Skywalker. Listen, we've already seen Luke absolutely beat down on Vader in Return of the Jedi, and yes, I do understand that this was an older, out of prime Vader who was also conflicted, fighting against a Luke Skywalker that was filled with rage and using hints of the dark side, but you also have to remember that this version of Luke is still not even close to being at his full potential. Now, we haven't gotten to see much of Luke Skywalker in his prime in Star Wars canon, but we do know that it is a fact that Luke Skywalker had the same potential as Anakin, and while Anakin never got to reach that potential because of his injuries, Luke at one point was able to. Now, in canon, we have seen what a full potential Anakin is capable of, because in the Mortis arc in the Clone Wars, we saw him tame the literal gods of the dark side and the light side of the Force, which are of course the son and the daughter, and then in the Darth Vader comics, we saw him enter the dark dimension, and there, Vader was able to unleash his full potential, which allowed him to clear the entire Jedi Council, including Yoda and Mace Windu, with ease, and he also one-shotted Palpatine using red Force lightning, which has only ever been used by the Son, but in this same dark dimension, Vader was eviscerated in a second by none other than Luke Skywalker. This clearly shows us that Luke Skywalker not only reached Anakin's full potential, but he was able to surpass it by who knows how much. Darth Vader in his prime would stand literally no chance whatsoever against a Prime Grandmaster Luke Skywalker. Now, the next two characters on this list are way closer matchups for Vader compared to Sidious and Luke, who would dog walk him, and the first of these two characters that would beat Vader, even if it's close, is the father of the Jedi Order, Grand Master Yoda. Even though Yoda was able to fight against Palpatine on an even playing field, he would not be able to defeat Vader as easily as Palpatine is able to for a couple of different reasons. For starters, he doesn't use Force Lightning, which is Palpatine's direct counter to Vader in a 1v1 fight, and secondly, Yoda is not as smart and prepared as Palpatine, so if he was ever to find himself in a situation where Vader is pulling up on him riding a literal Godzilla, he would most likely lose. Now, Yoda's main advantages against Vader are going to be his insane agility and speed, and also his great knowledge and strength in the Force. Bro, if a 900-year-old Yoda that was well past his prime and also clouded by the dark side, which made him weaker, was out here moving like this against Darth Sidious, I cannot even begin to imagine how fast and powerful he was in his prime. One of Vader's main weaknesses is his suit's limited mobility, and going up against Yoda, who was possibly the greatest user of the lightsaber form Ataru, which is all about fast mobility and constant movement, is an extremely bad matchup for him. Once again though, Vader was able to make up for this lack of mobility with extremely fast reflexes, raw strength, and power in the Force, and he eventually did end up becoming the greatest lightsaber duelist to ever live, even with these nerfs. But unfortunately, when you combine all of Yoda's strengths together, like his raw Force abilities, speed, and knowledge, he would end up getting the better of Vader in a fair 1v1 fight. Finally, the last and final being in Star Wars canon that would defeat a prime Darth Vader is the greatest warrior that the Jedi Order has ever seen, and equal to Grand Master Yoda himself, Mace Windu. Out of all the matchups in this video, this is by far my favorite one, and it is a never-ending debate that has been going on in the Star Wars community for years, but I think the outcome of this matchup is very clear. You know how Kenobi was able to become the greatest Form 3 user to ever live, even though he was a mere human going up against species that live for hundreds of years? Yeah, well, Mace Windu was able to become the greatest warrior the Jedi Order has ever seen in all its thousands of years of existence. This dude was so skilled and powerful that he was able to create an entirely new lightsaber form form known as Vapod, which we all know is specifically made to counter dark side users. What I find crazy about this is that he was able to create this form that perfectly counters Sith without ever interacting with one before. And the first time he ever got to properly use this form was against Palpatine, and he destroyed him. Dog, this lightsaber form is made specifically to channel his opponent's anger and aggression into fuel for his own power, and Darth Vader, being one of the most aggressive and unstable Force users in the galaxy, would be playing right into Windu's hands. Even though Darth Vader is a better duelist than Mace Windu, he would simply lose because of the hacks that Vapod has on dark-sided users.